Okay, I guess we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel and our very first broadcast of the Rick Riordan Presents read-along. So before we introduce our very, very special guest, we are going to introduce the host first. So in case you didn't know, hi, I'm Julia. This is my channel, Reader's World. And then Yara, I guess you're next, and then we'll just go down.
Hey. Hi, I'm Yara, and my channel is Array of Reading.
Hey, I'm Anna, and my channel is Anna and Books.
I'm Tate, and my channel is Bookish Constellations.
And now, who's this wonderful special guest? Well, you all know her. You all love her. She's the author of the Star Touched Queen series, Gilded Wolves, and the Pandava Quartet is Roshani Chokshi.
I love clapping for myself. My self-esteem.
Hey, give it a pat on the back. So we're going to ask you a few questions. So our first question is, you were the first Rick Riordan Presents author. Like, you're the first one that came out. How did Rick Riordan Presents happen, and how has it been to see it grow into this huge thing?
Yeah, okay, so it was truly bizarre. I was at Dragon Con in Atlanta, which is where my husband and I live. And it was in 2016, so it was the same year that my very first book came out. And I remember I was on this panel, and somebody had mentioned that Rick Riordan, literally titled Storyteller of the Gods, was opening up this imprint with Disney. And the whole point was to look for stories that sort of, they felt like Percy Jackson, mythological based adventures, but examining and exploring other cultures and stuff. And he wanted it specifically written by authors of that cultural heritage. And I legitimately started foaming at the mouth. I ran off that panel. I almost got stabbed by something because there's like people carrying like spears and stuff around. I was like, move out the way. My Sailor Moon fan fiction that is like a billion years old is finally going to happen. It's going to be a thing. And I emailed my agent. I was like, is this true? Can you go find out? She was like, please stop foaming at the mouth. It's really awkward. And then we found out that it was really going to be a thing. So, of course, by that point, the excitement had like faded, and I was like, well, he's never going to pick me. This would never, ever happen. And all we did was we came up with just a proposal. So it was basically my fan fiction. I was like, I have this idea that's like Sailor Moon, but Indian mythology and all these other things. And it's really just an excuse to have a girl gang, make a lot of Lord of the Rings jokes. Please be friends and be all together. And color coordinated, very important for the aesthetics. And I wrote just 3 chapters and a synopsis of where I thought the series would end up. And the first time I was on submission with my first book, The Star Touched Queen, it was like 6 months, a bajillion rejections, lots of just lying prone in my bed watching cat videos and despairing. And this time, it was like 3 days later, and they were like, Rick Riordan has the book. And I was like, what do you mean he has the book? Like to kill insects with it, or like what's he doing with it? And then they were like, he likes it. And I was still like, for killing insects, I assume. Like, what do you mean he likes it? It's ridiculous. And within a week, they'd bought 4 books, and I was just in a complete and total state of shock. And then he followed me on Twitter, and I had to like act really chill, like really, really chill. When in reality, I screenshotted it like 50,000 times, like at different points in the day, just to make sure it was real, that it was stamped, and that it had happened. And then I sent it to all my friends. That's my crazy story about that. But it's been a joy to watch that imprint grow. So many wildly talented authors who've become like family to me. I was texting Jen Cervantes, author of The Storm Runner, earlier today, basically just asking her if I should get new bed sheets, because she just has really great taste in interior design. And I was like, I don't know, man. Is the metallic too much, or should I get more gold? So, like,
oh, I love that so much. Okay, so obviously, like, the Rick Riordan Presents books are like kind of middle grade, and most of your other stuff has been YA. So I wondered, like, what it was, like, how it differed writing these middle grade stories versus the young adult, whether it was with like your like process with the writing, with the characters, all that stuff.
That's such a great question. I've really noticed that my books are like extremely finicky children, and they have very, very different needs in terms of how they want to be written, down to what time of day they wish to be written, even outfits. I've noticed that Aru gets sassier if I wear red lipstick, so I don't wear red lipstick when I write it. But I have to wear red
She's already
lipstick
so
for the
sassy.
Gilded Wolf because everybody in there is like Parisian and angsty, and exactly what I was when I was a teenager. So they're just like, ew, you're not like dressed for this occasion. Please leave. And I'm like, okay, do. So, I've also noticed that I need to keep separate candles for when I'm writing these books. I don't know why. Usually it depends on the series, but at any point in time, one of them will really, really want a tomato-scented candle. And I know that that sounds weird. I promise it's not like spaghetti sauce on my office table. It's like the smell of like a tomato at the farmer's market. You know, like when you pluck it and you smell it, you're like, wow, this smells like excellent sunshine steeped dirt. I love it. You know, like that's kind of, I don't know. And that to me, that's what creativity smells like. It smells like a tomato. But other things are just that for me, when I was working, or when I work on Aru, I find that I can't rush through the process of drafting, in the sense that if I have her voice wrong at any given point, it's like walking with a broken foot. There's no way for me to move forward from that. Versus I've noticed that with my young adult stories, it's easier for me to rush through the draft so I can get to the fun part of revising, and the characters don't punish me for that. If that makes any sense. I really think that great middle grade is super voicey. And if you sound like you're pushing it, or like, you know, like that awkward Steve Buscemi gif where he's like, "What's up, fellow kids?" And like, it's, then it feels like a Steve Buscemi book and nobody wants to read it. So I have to be very honest with myself.
Sorry, Steve Buscemi.
That's Steve.
I imagine Ara was really fun to write too.
She has been fun to write. She's also, unfortunately, I gave her a lot of my own characteristics when I was that age. So a lot of it is sometimes sitting there and thinking about all the ways that I felt wronged as a 7th grader. Or I'm just like, throughout the rest of the day. My husband will come home and I'm just like, remember that one guy that dumped me over AIM? Let's go find him on Instagram. And I'm like, no, why would we ever do that? I'm like, just to know that he sucks. He's fine, actually. He's a doctor or whatever.
Okay, so I was wondering if you were gonna collaborate with another author in the imprint, who would it be, and like what would that story be about?
You know, I'm a really big fan of Neil Gaiman's middle grade books. I loved Coraline. I'm obsessed with Graveyard Book. Have you guys read those?
I have read Ocean at the.
I know.
No, wait. Yeah, that's Neil.
Yeah,
I read that for school. That was one of the only books I liked for school.
Hide my face. I just made an expression.
The movie Coraline scared me.
If you get time, especially in October, read the Graveyard Book. To me, it's like a reimagining of the Jungle Book. You know, where Mowgli is raised by animals, but instead it's a little boy raised by the ghosts in a graveyard. And what I especially love about, you know, middle grade stories that feel a little literary, kind of like Kelly Barnhill's The Girl That Drank the Moon, is that you get to explore story on multiple different levels. It can be funny and at the same time heartbreaking and at the same time horrific. And that's like all the things that childhood really is. Sometimes we need years to even process what it was that we went through, or to have distance from it to realize, oh, that episode really hurt me, or this experience with someone was actually really joyful and helped me grow a lot. So that's why.
Yeah. I realized I had that book sitting right next to me.
Oh
so
my goodness!
Call out for me that it's just like sitting on the shelf directly next to me, and I haven't read it yet. So
Kate, it is calling to you. It is calling to you for me.
It is. It is.
Literally, how you pitched that, I
so
want to
see the shame.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I also think like sometimes some books are just meant for certain seasons, you know. So, I don't know. I think that's definitely a fall book.
Okay, so I wanted to know, so a lot, like you said, this imprint is really about like having authors telling their own stories from their own culture. So I wanted to know, like, what was the first time you really saw yourself in a book, and how did that play into when you were writing Arusha?
Oh, this question. Well, there were 2 times. One was, of course, in Harry Potter with the Padma and Parvati Patel twins. And then I was seriously wrong because Harry was such a shit date at the Yule Ball. I'm going to say that.
You're just speaking the truth. I mean,
if the chosen one was my date, I would knock his behind into a fountain or like into the lake and hope that the squid ate him. And I'd just be like, oh, well, that happened. That's what I would do. So I felt really shortchanged by that whole experience. And I was like, she's a powerful witch. She's a twin witch. There are so many things that you could do with this. And she's in Ravenclaw. And I'm like, and that's all that we get? Like just that glimpse. And then the other instance, have you guys read A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray?
Oh, I want to.
I have not.
What are you?
Clearly, we need to be reading more.
yeah.
No,
Book recommendations and like what?
I know. I'm sorry. This live show is just me scolding you. No, you clearly all have wonderful reading taste, considering that I am right here.
You're not wrong.
But A Great and Terrible Beauty, the reason I mentioned it is because it's the first time that I saw an Indian love interest. And he was like super hot and like broody and all these things. And I was like, wait, oh my God, who's this? What's happening? I was so excited. And that meant a lot to me because, you know, when I grew up in the South in Atlanta, and I went to a fairly diverse school, but, you know, there weren't a ton of Indian kids. And I just remember feeling really like, it sounds so silly, but I felt very unattractive growing up. I also had like hair that was like this and braces, so that was part of it. But it was also just never being able to see someone who looked like you or had a name like yours. It kind of made you feel erased and like perpetually ugly. I don't know how else to describe it. Like I was honestly in my 20s the first time that I wrote a story that had a main character with a name like mine, and a background like mine. Up until then, I was writing stories where I erased even myself, which is actually pretty sad. So that's why those stories are really important.
Oh, maybe a second. So this is kind of switching gears a bit, but obviously the covers for this series are gorgeous.
I know.
I just wondered with that, like, if like when they were being made, if you had any idea for the cover that you wanted, if you had any say, if it was just kind of like throw it to the gods and just hope, and just kind of your reaction to them.
It's very much a throw it to the gods and hope. Nobody really trusts me with my cover direction with either of my publishers, which is kind of fair. Like for the Star Touch Queen, they're like, what do you envision? And I was like, I really like trees. But I think I was like taken off the email chain. Is anybody there? Well, that was sad. But I love it. I think Abigail Dela Cruz did an amazing job. And I'm really just grateful to like Disney and the Rick Riordan Presents team for really celebrating Aru front and center and celebrating her sisters on those covers. It just makes me really happy, really, really happy. And like seeing little kids come into the line and say, or that they grew their hair out or they wore a long braid because of Aru. It just, you know, I just like sit there and like silently weep and they're really bewildered.
Yeah, so each book in the series so far has added like new people to the main cast of characters. So like book 2 added Aiden and Bryn, and book 3 added Nikita, Sheila, and Rudy. And I want to know, like, were they characters you always saw they were going to be part of the crew, or did they kind of develop as you were writing?
I think they were always going to be in the crew. And part of that is because I'm dealing with the source material of the Mob Audit, which is on the series is based off of a little bit, or loosely based off of. And there's so many fascinating characters within that. Are we allowed to get spoilery in the live show? I don't know.
Hold up. We prepared for this occasion. Hold up.
Oh God.
Oh, I forgot about this.
You have a spoiler card.
I know we joked about this, but
oh God.
Okay,
do it.
So if you have not read the full series of Aru Shah that has come out, please mute your screen until Sebastian comes down.
All right, hold on. I just need a second.
Oh God, I still can't look at his face.
wait. I'm sorry, but that's
Okay, I'll
nightmares.
I can put it, but I think it's something else. I just felt because in the second book, Sebastian gets referenced, so I was like, hey.
Well, actually, that was going to be a joke that I actually made in the book, and I took it out because it went down this weird, like, dental humor thing. I was just like, he doesn't have teeth. Does he have teeth? Have you ever noticed how Disney characters just seem to have like a block of white across their face? Is nobody else disturbed?
Oh my god.
Yeah, so I took that out. Anyway, that's why I was like delighted to see that. But to answer your question, so for example, in the original source material, there's a character named Draupadi, and she is the collective wife of all 5 Bandava brothers. And for me, like when I knew that I was going to gender flip the Bandava characters in the first place, I was like, how am I going to deal with this? What is this character going to be? And so that's sort of why Aiden's nickname is Wifey. And I really wanted to explore like what his relationship would be with each girl, like how he does love every single one of them, but perhaps in different ways, that sort of thing. And then for the character of Rudy, who we meet in Arusha and the Tree of Wishes, kind of say like Rudy is such a chaotic mess. He just went off the pages. Every single thing I told him to do, he was like, nah. And he's sort of loosely based off of the actual character of Alupi, who does make an appearance in the Bandava books. And it's because I just wanted to know like what it would look like to have like a young Naga prince. Like how annoying would they be, and would there be any sort of romantic tension, and who would be a better fit for him to have that sort of chemistry with? So that's been a process. Sebastian down.
Bye, Sebastian.
Bye, Sebastian.
So excited for someone to come in and not be ready for Sebastian just to pop up and we'll not
in your dreams.
Kind of with it, that you have all these characters and some of them, kind of do what you want them to do, and some of them are very finicky about how you write them. Like, what was your favorite Arusha character to write for whatever reason?
Oh, definitely Sohail, the Chakra bird, who makes an appearance in the Tree of Wishes. I really think that so many series live and die based on their side characters. Like when you think about ensemble cast, like if you consider Guardians of the Galaxy, I would lay my life down for Groot. He says 3 words. That's it. Just 3. I would any for instance, a tiny little tree, I would do it. And so I'm really fascinated by side characters like that, who seem to have like either one line or one kind of obsession, or who seem like contradictory in some strange way, like a rabbit, like a tiny rabbit that's like awkwardly homicidal, and everybody's like, oh, that's just George. Something like that are always, for some reason, my favorite characters to write. So Hale is really funny just to me because he's in love with like flashing lights. If he ever saw the Eiffel Tower, he would just probably like seize on the spot and collapse. And so he was just a delightful character for some reason to me because of that.
I love that.
I like how those characters also like they're surprisingly deep at times, and it moves your heart.
I know they do that. They do that, and they spring themselves onto me like that, and it makes me really upset. So I'll just like sit there crying after writing. It's fine. Where'd Tate go?
I don't know.
Oh no, it's an icon. Missing icon. Oh no.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I'll contact with them.
Just keep going. I'll join you in a second, I guess.
Okay. Oh, that's your voice. Okay.
So you have a lot of mythology to work with, based like with entirety of India. So I was wondering what the process of like researching and like kind of morphing that into like the modern day references and stuff, how that went.
Yeah. So I'm really fortunate because my Indian grandmother, who we call Ba, which just means grandmother in Gujarati. Hi again.
Hi. Disappeared.
She's amazing, and I run so many story ideas past her actually, or I literally was calling her today just to be like, what is the life, like, there's this whole thing about how the universe basically explodes at the end of one day in one god's life. And I was like, that's chill. Like when he goes to sleep, everything starts over. So I was like, how long was that day? And she's like, well, it's actually 4.382 human solar years, or 4.382 billion human solar years. Sorry. So stuff like that. So it's a lot of mythology that's honestly filtered through the people in my family who are just incredible storytellers. And the thing about Hindu mythology is that, for one thing, it's inextricably intertwined with our religion, which me and my husband both practice. And it also varies by region. So for me, the thing that I'm trying to do is not tell like the specific way, is not just stick with the specific way in which I was raised with the story, but try to find the largest common denominators between that myth across regions and try to honor that, it's definitely, it's hard, and you can really get into the weeds with something. I know I get a lot of questions from readers about how come the certain gods don't make an appearance in Arsha. Like you will not see Vishnu, Ganesh, Shiv, Lakshmi, or any of those deities, simply because for me, what I chose to focus on are considered Rig Vedic deities. So I think it's like, it was a version of Hinduism that was practiced up until the 5th century before it then became what we consider modern Hinduism. And for me, it just seems like a safer space to play with those stories while not, what am I trying to say? Not stomping too hard on my own like religious. So I'm still trying to find a way to like incorporate those stories because it's a lot more reflective of modern Hinduism, but that's just where I chose to focus my attention.
So like, since you're like dealing with all these different kinds of things, was there any like deleted scene that you really wanted to keep in the story, but then you're like, I can't, like it was really hard just like not to put it in there?
Yes, actually, I think that I'm trying to work it into book 4 right now, so I can't tell you what it is. But I mean, if you read my stories, you know that I just really love clever wordplay. I was almost a lawyer. I was actually in my first year of law school when I got my first book deal. And I absolutely loved law school. So anything where I get to play with words and riddles and something clevery like that makes me very happy. I think there was also like another deleted scene that was just like me being indulgent with myself. I think it was just the potatoes arguing over what movie to watch. It was just, like,
give it to us.
Of just stupidity.
You say it's stupid, but we would sell our souls just to get that scene. So if you want to just like post it somewhere.
I actually have been thinking that maybe I should make Rudy just like a fake Instagram profile just because I'm always like making a reference to it in book 4. But like, what would he would just like gram the stupidest thing.
Here's a parking lot.
Here's a parking lot.
Yeah.
Super fascinating. Yeah. Never seen one before. Today I encountered this thing called a vending machine. What does it vend? Like all these things. He's special.
So when writing the series, did you discover any like stories in Hindu mythology that you hadn't really been familiar with?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, and the stories that have always fascinated me, like across all kinds of mythology, are ones where there's a bit of a tragic center to them. So I remember one version of a god named Dhruv or Dhruva. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. He's like a constellation god, like I think the god of the pole star or something. And basically his whole story was just about wanting to be loved by his parents and trying to do like everything he could to make them love him, which is really sad. And then there was another story about a different goddess. Oh my gosh, Manasa, I think is her name. She's worshipped more in Bangalore, I think, or Bengal. But she had an interesting place in the pantheon because she needed to convince people to worship her, and they wouldn't. And so she would like go. She's like a goddess of poison, also, and snakes, and she just sort of had to like essentially fight to be recognized as a deity. And it was stories like that that felt like they had deeply like human motivations in terms of what we would consider things that we want, like to be loved, to be recognized, to be respected, that really resonated with me.
So the books that you've written so far have been, you know, like mythology, fantasy based. What is it that makes you like love writing fantasy so much? And like moving on, once you start getting towards like the end of Arusha, do you think you're gonna keep on writing fantasy or go into something else?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, the thing I love about mythology is honestly, it is the way in which we try to explain the world around us, phenomena. And also emotional questions too that are devastating. You know, why do bad things happen to good people? For somebody back in the day when perhaps childcare and maternity care wasn't good, why did your baby die in the cradle? Then you could come up with explanations like, well, I crossed the fairies, or the child was stolen into the fairy realm, or the reason why it's so cold and we're freezing right now is because Persephone is with her husband in the underworld. And I think that's why I just loved those stories so much. They never get old to me because we are all always trying to find an explanation for the things that hurt us, for the things that fill our heads with wonder. And also just always trying to find out where is our place in the grand scheme of things. So that's why I love myths and fairy tales. But I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to keep writing. I literally don't know what else I would do. I mean, reality is so boring. But I am actually working on my first, I guess it would be called, on my first contemporary with a slight magical twist story. I'm working kind of on my first adult book, which I don't really know what it wants to be yet. I'm kind of learning it as I go. It feels a little bit like a thriller. There's no magic, but it celebrates a lot of fairy tale elements. And it's really creepy to write, and I don't like it. But it's fine, I suppose. Sure.
Do you want to give it to us? I don't care if it's a manuscript.
It's weird. It's going in weird places. I'm like, oh, I can't believe I wrote that. I don't like this. I'll put my laptop away for a bit. Yeah, some stories just need to be written, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, that was like a theme in our show, is the idea that stories just morph to like what people need, and I think that's really beautiful.
Wow. Yeah. I'm glad. I'm really glad you did that. I felt really clever when I came up with that. It took me like 2 days. I was like, what am I trying to say about stories?
What's the meaning?
Yeah. You know, I honestly think across the board in all of my books, for some reason, I cannot escape the need to constantly answer the question of how do stories make us immortal? You know, how do you make yourself a myth? I don't know. It's just interesting.
Just going deep, like.
We love that thought.
So, this was according to a website that I found. Supposedly,
yeah, bad start.
Yeah, why did I say that? So, Paramount bought the rights to the Arusha series. I know authors do not have any control over the adaptations, but is there anything news on it? And like, if there was an adaptation in the brewing, what would you want from the adaptation? Like, how would you want it adapted?
Yeah, well, as you know, no one tells us anything ever. I don't even. Nope, I have literally no clue what's happening. But I think that I know that we've started on a second script is my understanding, and we have renewed the option with them, which is great. That signifies at least that the studio is still interested, and so that's always promising, you know. And at the very least, it helps cover my mortgage, so that's fine. Honestly, my real hope is just that they celebrate. What is it? I really want them to celebrate the culture. I really hope that the story isn't appropriated in any way, and I have as much faith as one can. Not to be negative, like I am excited, but I'm also just, I don't know, I feel sometimes so weird like saying the thing out loud that I hope for. I wonder if I'm gonna jinx myself or just do something. And I'm also really superstitious. Yesterday I was drying my hair and my towel just, I don't know, lost its mind and knocked a mirror onto the ground, and I panicked. I started crying. My husband was like, "Oh my God, like I can't with you." I was freaking out. I like immediately prayed. I called my grandmother who did like this ritual. We had to like be totally quiet and like put salt around your head like 7 times. And like the whole time my husband is just like, "What are you doing?" I called my mother because she's Filipino and Catholic. And I was like, "Yo, go spray some holy water on that wedding photo." My husband, it really just has to hit my face. And she was also like, "You got it." Because the women in my family, we were all about the superstition. Anyway, so that's a long story short of, yes, I have lots of hopes. I do want to tell you, I just don't want to jinx it.
Oh no, that's totally valid.
That's valid.
So valid.
Guys, this is my long story. Oh, and then, so this is a thing, I don't know, if you ever feel like, you know, sometimes like you're having a really good day and you wonder if like somebody somewhere is like, "Man, I hate that person. I hope they have a really terrible day." My grandmother will put like a black dot behind my ear with eyeliner, and it's supposed to like ward off the evil eye. So I meant to do that, and then I lost my eyeliner yesterday. As I lost,
Oh no!
I broke the mirror, and I hit my ankle on the bed, and there's a bruise on it. It's just been a whole thing. But anyway,
You need that eyeliner.
You have a bad day, put some eyeliner behind your ear, and I hope that your day is less bad.
Oh my gosh, I'm so gonna take that. Do it every day.
No, but I can't even hide it. Like y'all, like I'm the only one with short hair. All of you can hide the fact that you have eyeliner. It will show up. There's no
It's gonna be
You
cool.
put it behind
Something.
something. It's like
That's
a tiny
true.
dot. It's like a you can do with a Sharpie, I think. Actually, I don't know. You should Google it.
I'm gonna go with exactly what your grandma did. I trust your grandma on this.
Standing in the kitchen. Why are you pouring salt over yourself? To me.
Like goes around a ladder just to make sure it doesn't go under it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
So, do you have any advice for anyone who wants to write middle grade?
Yeah, well, I said yeah really enthusiastically, and then really, I know it sounds so trite. Read as much as you can. Truly read as much as you can. And I think that the really special thing about middle grade is to understand your character really well before you start writing them. You know, like I think sometimes there's this impulse to just go, and I totally get it. Like just start writing, pantsing the draft, and some people can do that. But for me specifically, it's not a thing that I can pull off. I really need to understand the person's voice. I need to understand what it is that they want. And I ask myself those questions. What does this character want? What are they afraid of? What is the thing that would hurt them the most? And when, let's say that they enter a party, what would they be doing that's different from everybody else around them? Are they the person making a beeline for the snacks? Are they hiding in a corner? Are they taking an artsy Instagram? Are they doing a selfie? Are they, or are they like standing in the driveway thinking like, I would rather set myself on fire than step foot into this party? Who are they in this moment? And those kinds of questions can help guide you into that story. I also read a friend told me that for middle grade chapters, to keep it kind of punchy, if that's the sort of story you want to write, something that's really fast, like fast moving and action oriented and stuff, that it's the sweet spot is about 7 pages per chapter, which I have actually found to be pretty helpful because I test all my stories on my husband, and my husband is like functionally a 12-year-old boy. And the best way to know when he is bored, so I'll print it out and I'll hand it to him. And as he's reading it, I'll watch as he like slowly like slumps over and like says something like, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, blah, blah, blah. Or he gets up, and then I make a note on that page because then I know that that's when I've lost his attention. And that's how I make sure the story keeps going. I'm making him accent sound ridiculous. He's very brilliant. He's an orthopedic surgeon. I swear he's smart.
That duality.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the duality of man. Man can do both, you know?
Actually, that's great. I should like make a shirt like that for his birthday because his name is Amen, so it's spelled like Amen. That'd be hilarious. Duality of Amen. I'd do that.
Oh, I love that so much.
Oh my gosh, start a shop for t-shirts. I would so buy.
Oh yeah. But really specific ones that are like catered to like your husband.
Yeah.
Be hilarious. Actually, when I was writing Aru, one of the scenes in that book was really drawn from the first time I met him because how old were we? We were 14, and it was like the start of 9th grade, and I'd watched his house being built in our neighborhood before he moved there. I might have like hit it. His mailbox was like car at one point, but it's fine. And so the very first time that I saw him at high school, I heard so much like our neighborhood was really like gossipy Indian people, gossipy Asians. It's great. But they were gossiping nonstop about him and his family moving in. They're like, did you know he's very, very smart? His parents are doctors, la, 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 la. And they say like he's a straight A student and like how I'm not a straight A student, which was rude. I was going to be just like this hideous nerd, but he's beautiful. And I did not know that. And so the very first time I saw him, I yelled at him, hey, you, I know where you live. Like,
oh my gosh.
So,
you really put that like
connection
right into Aru's shop. Like, oh no, he's pretty. I know where you live.
Yeah. So that was really bad. And we had to carpool for a year and he didn't talk to me. Like at all. He didn't acknowledge my existence. He would like get in the car and be like, ugh. And I'd be like, what you listening to? Snoop Dogg? That's cool. I love Snoop. Can I listen? It was really cool, but we got married last year and so it's been fine.
Yay.
I love that.
I know. You're just easier to wear them down when you know where they live. But like don't be creepy about it. Even though don't be creepy about it, she says, knowing she like 100% Edward Cullen, her spouse. It's fine.
Okay, speaking of being funny, these books definitely have like a really solid balance of like having a lot of humor, but also a lot of seriousness. Like I remember reading the first book that like within like 3 pages, you had like the scene with the house where the house is like, and if you must forget me, do it with a smile. Which, like I read that and I was like, I need a second. And then like 2 pages later, I was like, it's so cold. I wonder if you'd have to pick your nose all the time so the ice, you don't get icicles in your nose and it stabs you and you bleed to death. And I was like, truly like the way that you could switch. And I just wondered like how you found that balance and if that like style of humor like came naturally to you.
That is so sweet of you. That's really that's how my brain works. It goes from like deep, like what is the purpose of myth making to like this one time I stalked my husband. You know, I don't know. That's just how it works for me for some reason. But I also think like it's sort of emblematic of I think what we were all like at that age. Things are somehow like the funniest thing you've ever seen, and then the next minute like you will never be this heartbroken ever again. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, that's like the wonder of writing children's books. And yet, it's like that sense of, what is it? You know, like when you're that age, all those things that you feel, you don't have any context for what they're supposed to feel like. Your first heartbreak is devastating. The first time you fall in love, it feels like you're dying. You have no idea what it's supposed to feel like. And so all those feelings are just so raw and so vivid. And I think that's why I really love writing these stories, because for me, like they're the moments that seem infinite, even though it's like the fastest part of your life, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Bleak, right? The fastest part of your life. Like, oh no.
Yeah, if there's any like 13-year-olds in the chat, I'm really sorry.
You're gonna live forever.
It's interesting just like to look at them when you're older, because it's like you have that perspective now.
Yeah.
So it's just really nice.
Sometimes I do feel like Aru though. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, everything is the end of the world. Good or bad, every single thing that happens is the end of the world. Me too, Aru.
And then you use humor to defend yourself from feeling that way. Because
get that Aru Shah, Percy Jackson vibes of like the world is ending. I'm gonna make a joke and it'll be fine.
Yeah. Pardon my existential crisis. Let me just cover it up with some sarcasm. It's honestly the only way I know how to live. Really.
Oh yeah. That is the way to live.
Now put that on a t-shirt. Sarcasm is the only way I know how to live.
With this somehow. With just a little picture of Roshani going. Oh, we're gonna make so much money off of this.
We'll sell it. We'll sell it for the next book. Is that pre-order, and then it comes with a shirt.
So great. Disney's so good with their pre-order giveaways. For the first book, they did cookies that were shaped like the lamp, and I think they sent me like 50, and I think I was supposed to share them, but I
would not have thought about sharing them for 1 second. I do not blame you.
No.
Or like you freeze one.
Yeah, well, especially because they were the kind of sugar cookies that have like the really hard icing, and you're just like, but like not so hard that you're gonna like break your tooth, and then it's like perfectly crumbly, but not too crumbly.
Oh yeah, like
the whole thing.
Sugar cookies.
It's a great cookie.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
So we got some fan questions because we submitted out a form, and some people wanted to know like some like questions about you. So like, what made you want to become an author? Because you talked about being in law school. So like, how did the process of like wanting to write like full time come about?
I was just I've been writing like since forever. I think I tried to submit my first book to literary agents when I was in high school, and it was just thinly veiled Twilight fan fiction. That's fine. Nobody wanted it. That's fair. And, for me, I guess there was this moment when I was pretty good as a student in high school, and I had some fabulous teachers, and I was actually voted most likely to succeed, which is kind of hilarious. And then in college, my parents were amazing. I'm obsessed with them, but I'm also first generation American, and so like wanting to tell them like, I think I'm just gonna study just dragons or like just do that. Can I do that? Am I allowed to do that? And they were just like, absolutely not. You gotta study the sciences, do a pre-med thing or do pre-law and that kind of stuff. So I did that. And then, but my parents were still supportive, and I still majored in like 14th century British literature. It was just with the promise that I would then go to law school with it, you know? And so for a year after I graduated, I worked in a tax law office, freezing, with like this ficus plant named Bert, who I swore like moved an inch every day. I don't know where it was going, but Bert was always moving. And I was supposed to be studying for the LSAT, but I'm awful at standardized tests. I'm really just bad at tests. At the same time, that was when I started writing the Star Touch Queen, because it was almost like I had the worst sort of job after graduating from a school that was really expensive. All the people that I knew were working as consultants. They were already in med school. They had all these like cool internships lined up. And I remember somebody from my high school literally said like, LOL, remember when you were most likely to succeed? And
let's go, everybody.
That was a bad year for me. I deleted my social media, and I was cold and alone and hanging out with Bert. My boyfriend, now my husband, was working as a scribe in the emergency room, preparing to like study for the MCATs. It was just really rough. And yet at the same time, I have to acknowledge that I'm extremely privileged and able to live at home and not have to worry about that. It's part of the reason why I was able to publish so young, I think. I didn't have to worry about a lot of things that other people do, and I am always grateful for that opportunity, but it is something to acknowledge. So don't put pressure on yourself to publish super young. There's not exactly reasons for it. You have no expiration date for success. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. I wrote The Star-Touched Queen because I felt like I had nothing left to lose. I was just like, well, I didn't get the job I wanted. I didn't do great on the LSAT. Luckily, I had a good enough GPA to get me into a good law school. And I killed it in law school, FYI. So like, ignore people who say that you have to do good on standardized testing. That's nonsense. And from there, I think I was just so panicked about feeling like I hadn't done anything right, that I wasn't in the place I imagined where I would be, that I had disappointed my parents, that like people were talking about me behind my back, that it, for the first time, let me write the thing that I really wanted to read. It was the first book that, again, had Hindu mythology. It was the first time I wrote a non-white character as a main character. And that ended up rewarding me. And so the fall before I started law school, I signed with my agent, who had like very few book deals at the time. And we're actually very close in age. We like never bring it up. But she's a baby shark. I absolutely love her. She championed me. She revised the book with me hundreds of times. We got so many rejection letters, some of which were kind of heartbreaking. You know, they were like, I just don't know where this book is going to live. And truthfully, The Star-Touched Queen is not very different from Beauty and the Beast, you know? So if you can have 1,000 Western versions of Beauty and the Beast, but you can't find space on your shelf for one Indian one, are you kidding me? You know? And when The Star-Touched Queen sold, my parents, generous and amazing, again, let me move back home. That's where I wrote The Crown of Wishes. And when The Star-Touched Queen hit the New York Times bestselling list, I made the decision to permanently defer from law school. And that's kind of what I did. But again, please remember, I could do that because I was allowed to live with my parents. They've helped me out with a ton of stuff. That privilege does, I mean, you can't ignore it. And then I was just fortunate to be able to take that time off to really just focus on writing those books. And sometimes I wish I'd finished law school. I really do. I loved it. Law is the study of storytelling. And I sometimes wonder how different my books would be if I had done something else professionally first and then revisited what it would be like to tell stories later. Because so many of my favorite writers and authors, you know, they've lived 1,000 different lives before they realized that they had a story inside them that they needed to tell. You know? Oh, that was so rambling. I apologize.
Oh, I loved it.
No,
I loved it, yeah.
Who wants the next one?
One person asked, what books did you read while growing up?
I reread over and over and over again Tithe by Holly Black. Like, me and my best friend would hide out at like Indian parties and stuff. Like, and you know, like everyone, for some reason, I don't know why they always put the kids in the basement. It's kind of rude. I just like, in the living room. Why am I being shunted off downstairs? So we would all just be like thrown together in the basement, and my best friend and I would alternate between reading like comics and Tithe, which is amazing. And it's really romantic. And it was the first time that I saw anybody treat the fairy world as something cruel, as something that had teeth, as something that was distinctly not human. And I was obsessed with it. I was also really obsessed with the idea that perhaps if I wandered through a rain-drenched woods at night, I would also find a sexy woman. And didn't happen. I did, however, find bronchitis, and that was upsetting. But, you know, follow your dreams. I'm still a huge fan of Holly Black. The Cruel Prince trilogy is fantastic if you haven't read it. And sometimes when I need to like pinch myself to tell myself like all of this is like actually real, I open up my phone to where I have her phone number. It's wild. I spoke to her on the phone. She likes me. So I loved Tithe. I loved Artemis Fowl when I was growing up. The first time I met Owen Colfer, I burst into tears. It was really awkward for him. And what else I love reading? Pretty much any sort of mythological thing I could get my hands on, I adored. And then my mom's like Jude Devereaux paperbacks. You know, there was just like a man with like streaming flowy hair and like one nipple showing. You know, like, I don't know what's happening. This is really weird. But I don't know. It's great. I had no idea what half of those words were.
They were entertainment.
We're definitely
yeah.
entertaining. And then, bringing it to school and just you have like something dog-eared, just like, look at this page. Giggling. It was really formative for me as a kid.
Kind of jumping off of like you being like, oh wow, what do I do? Like when I meet people I like. Someone in the comments actually, Elizabeth Cifuentes asked, "What's your weirdest fan interaction?" And I'm curious about if you have one.
Somebody once had me sign a toilet.
What?
How? I couldn't
Well, she was, to be fair, dressed as Moaning Myrtle. So she just had like a toilet around her head. But I was like, what's happening? What am I doing? And it was really funny. Very creative.
Oh.
I didn't ask if it was like where did you procure this toilet from? I just didn't know. I like wrote it,
Linguistics of that.
like holding the pen as far away from me as possible.
Yeah, get like one of those like extendable hand claw things and like write with that.
Yeah. Do you remember those things? I think they still have them. It's like it looked like a little T-Rex head, and you could like pick stuff up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love those.
I would love to be able to incorporate that in a signing, but I haven't figured out how. And I also don't know, like it doesn't really pick up a lot of stuff. Just like a Q-tip, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, just for the aesthetic of it, I guess.
Just like, here's my dinosaur.
I like to think that the person has like their bookshelf and has like all your books, and then next to it is just like this toilet like seat cover like with your signature on it, and like this is my prized possession.
Yeah.
As long as they don't want to flush my books in said toilet, that would be good. So that's all I'm looking for.
Oh wow. Oh, I was not ready for that. I thought it was gonna be like, oh, someone like that's like I was not ready.
Someone cried on my shoulder. No. Someone asked me to sign a toilet seat.
Wow. Oh, I'm thinking it every day. Oh, I love that so much.
Okay.
I have one. So like, what was your favorite scene to write in like so far Arusha series?
A favorite book in the Arisha series?
Scene.
A favorite scene? Honestly, my favorite scenes to date has been the chapter with the Palace of Illusions in the first book. When I remember when I was a kid and my family was moving, my siblings and I, we really missed our first house. I was actually born in St. Louis, Missouri, and I loved that house so much. And when I was a kid, I like wrote letters to it because I wondered if it missed me as much as I missed it. So yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that scene. That was like one of my favorite scenes in that book.
Aww.
Especially like the like because I remember I was reading that scene and it was like, oh, ain't true, and I was like, the disc is gonna be the disc, and then you were like, it's all in your mind. I was like, so you got, it's not just middle schoolers. You got the adult on that one. I was bamboozled. I had a great time.
I'm very glad to hear that.
So good.
So I think that's what we have for questions. So thank you for joining us. This was so much fun.
I'm really
You were so funny. I hope you know that. Like you were such a nice person. Oh my god.
Funny.
Like
very sweet.
Like you could like if you're like I don't know what to write anymore, just go on like tour as a stand-up comedian. Like just John Mulaney won't know what hit him
for a couple of hours and just like write that down and just sell it.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys are very sweet. This was by far the best Monday of 2020 so far.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You guys were
got to give us a good Monday in 2020.
Because all Mondays, as you know, are cursed, and then 2020 is its own entity. Literally, a storm cloud was like passing by my window, like it was like mad at me.
Oh yeah, it's been raining all day, but it stopped at like half an hour before this started. So the rain clouds knew. They knew over here.
They knew. They know what's up.
They're being blessed by your presence.
Oh yeah.
This is really special. I can't tell you enough like how it never ceases to amaze me that people are reading these stories and that they're letting these characters find a home in their hearts. So I am deeply, deeply indebted to what you guys are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you for writing it.
Yeah. So before we go, we'd like to promote Arusha and the City of Gold come out April 6th, 2021, right? Right? Okay, great. Got the date right. And then for everyone that is joining us for the read along, next month we will be reading the Sal and Gabby series by Carlos Hernandez, and then also Dragon Pearl by Eunhan Lee. So thank you all for joining us and submitting questions, and thank you again, Rosh, for joining us.
Absolutely. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.